when my daughter's boyfriend called me a racist on Facebook Live. 50,000 people watched my reputation get destroyed in real time. But what they didn't know was that I had a box in my attic that would change everything. By the end of this story, that same boyfriend would be begging me for forgiveness, and my daughter would finally see who she'd really been dating. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. The morning it all started, I was drinking coffee in the kitchen, where I'd raised Emily alone for 23 years. The house still smelled like the cinnamon rolls my wife Linda used to make every Sunday, though she'd been gone 8 years now. Emily was upstairs getting ready for work, and I could hear voices, her voice and his. Tyler had been living in my house for 3 months. 3 months of watching him sleep until noon while my daughter worked double shifts at the hospital. 3 months of him leaving his dishes in the sink, borrowing money for gas, and treating my home like his personal hotel. "Dad, we need to talk," Emily said, appearing in the doorway with Tyler behind her. At 25, he was 2 years older than my daughter, but he carried himself like a teenager who'd never been held accountable for anything. "Morning, Mr. Johnson," Tyler said, though it was past 11. He didn't offer to shake my hand. He never did. I set down my coffee mug, the one Emily had made me in pottery class when she was 12, painted with crooked letters spelling "World's Best Dad." Back then I believed it. Back then she looked at me like I hung the moon. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" I asked Emily, though my eyes stayed on Tyler. He was scrolling through his phone, not even pretending to be part of the conversation. "Tyler and I have been talking," Emily began, and I already didn't like where this was heading. "We want to move in together, get our own place." "That sounds like a good plan," I said carefully. "Have you found somewhere you can afford?" Tyler finally looked up from his screen. "Actually, we were thinking we could stay here a little longer, save up some money." I'd heard this song before. For 3 months, it had been the same tune. "Tyler, when was the last time you worked?" His jaw tightened. "I'm between opportunities right now. The job market is tough. For 8 months. The words came out harder than I intended, but I was tired of dancing around the truth. "Son, there are help-wanted signs on every corner in this town." "Here we go." Tyler muttered, his fingers already moving across his phone screen. I didn't know it then, but he was opening his camera app. "Dad," Emily's voice carried a warning. "Tyler is trying." "Trying what exactly?" I stood up my chair, scraping against the linoleum floor that Linda and I had installed together 20 years ago. "Emily, you're working 60 hours a week while he sleeps in. You're paying for his food, his gas, his everything. This isn't trying, this is using." "That's not fair," Emily protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Even she could see it. Tyler stepped forward, and I noticed his phone was angled toward me. "You got something you want to say to me, old man?" The way he said "old man" made my blood run cold. It wasn't just disrespectful, it was calculated. Like he was trying to provoke something. "I'm saying my daughter deserves better than someone who won't work, won't contribute, and won't show basic respect in the house that's keeping him off the streets." "There it is." Tyler said, his voice suddenly louder, more theatrical. "You can't stand seeing your precious white daughter with a black man. That's what this is really about, isn't it?" The accusation hit me like a physical blow. "That has nothing to do with—" "Save it," Tyler interrupted, holding his phone higher. "This old white man can't handle the fact that his daughter is in love with someone who doesn't look like him. Tell them how you really feel about black people, Mr. Johnson." "Tyler, stop," Emily said, but she sounded uncertain now. "This is about character," I said firmly, looking directly into his camera. This is about a man who takes advantage of my daughter's kindness and won't even try to better himself. Character. Tyler laughed, but it was cold calculated. You mean the character of knowing my place right? Of being grateful that the white man even lets me in his house? I felt the trap closing around me, but I couldn't see a way out that wouldn't make everything worse. I never said anything about race. I'm talking about responsibility. Responsibility. Tyler repeated the word like it tasted bitter. That's what racists always say when they can't say what they really mean. Emily was crying now, torn between the man she loved and the father who'd raised her. Please, both of you, just stop. But Tyler wasn't stopping. He was just getting started. Look at this, everybody, he said to his phone. This is what systemic racism looks like in 2024. A white father who can't stand seeing his daughter happy because her happiness comes from a black man. That's not true, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. Tyler turned to Emily. You see it now, baby. You see who your father really is. The doubt in Emily's eyes broke something inside me that I didn't know could still break. After Linda died, Emily was all I had left. We'd been through everything together, her mother's cancer, the funeral, the years of just us against the world. Now this stranger was using the color of his skin as a weapon to tear down everything we'd built. I think you should leave, I said quietly. Oh, I'm leaving, Tyler said, still recording. But not before everyone sees what kind of man raised you, Emily. Not before this goes exactly where it needs to go. He stopped recording and immediately started typing on his phone. Within seconds, I heard the whoosh of a message being sent. What did you just do? I asked. Tyler smiled, but there was nothing warm about it. I just showed the world who you really are, Mr. Johnson. Hope you're ready for the consequences. Emily grabbed his arm. Tyler, what did you post? The truth, he said simply, about your racist father who can't stand seeing you with a black man. As they walked out of my kitchen, I stood there in the sudden silence, surrounded by the ghosts of better days. The coffee had gone cold in my mug. The morning sun still streamed through the windows Linda had loved so much. But everything else had changed. I didn't know it yet, but within 3 hours, Tyler's video would have 50,000 views, and my phone wouldn't stop ringing. I didn't know that local news stations would be calling, that protesters would be gathering outside my house, that the construction business I'd built over 30 years would be labeled as racist by people who'd never met me. What I knew was that Tyler Jackson had just declared war on the wrong man. Because in that moment, standing in my empty kitchen, I remembered something I'd been trying to forget for 50 years. I remembered a jungle in Vietnam where the color of a man's skin meant nothing when bullets were flying. I remembered carrying wounded soldiers who called me brother. I remembered promises made and kept no matter the cost. Tyler had made one critical mistake. He'd assumed he knew who Robert Johnson was based on the color of my skin and the age on my face. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he could be. The first call came at 2:47 p.m. I was in my truck heading back from the Henderson job site where I'd just finished laying foundation for their new garage. 32 years in construction, and I still took pride in level corners and clean lines. My phone buzzed against the dashboard, a number I didn't recognize. Bob Johnson. I answered the way I always did. Is this the racist piece of garbage who hates his daughter's boyfriend? The voice was young, angry, full of righteous fury. I pulled over to the shoulder, my hand suddenly unsteady. Excuse me. We saw the video, you Nazi piece of... I hung up before he could finish. The phone rang again immediately. Different number, same rage. Then another, and another. By the time I reached my driveway, my phone had rung 17 times. The voicemail notifications kept pinging like gunfire. I sat in my truck for a moment staring at the house Emily and I had called home since she was 3 years old. The white picket fence I'd painted every spring, the flower beds Linda had planted, the porch swing where I'd read Emily bedtime stories about princesses and dragons. It looked the same, but everything had changed. Inside, I opened my laptop, the one Emily had taught me to use when she was in high school. "Dad, you need to know about the internet," she'd said, laughing at my hunt and peck typing. "It's not going anywhere." I typed Bob Johnson racist into Google, my fingers heavy on the keys. The first result made my stomach drop. "Racist father tries to break up interracial relationship, posted 4 hours ago. 127,000 views. I clicked play and watched myself through Tyler's lens. But this wasn't the conversation I remembered. The video started in the middle, cutting out all context, making it look like I'd attacked Tyler unprovoked. My words about character and responsibility sounded hollow without the background of 3 months of frustration. 3 months of watching him take advantage of my daughter's kindness. The comments section was a river of hatred. "This is exactly what's wrong with America. Someone should teach this old racist a lesson. That poor girl, imagine having a father like this. I hope his business fails." I scrolled down, watching strangers tear apart my character with the confidence of people who'd never met me, never shaken my hand, never seen me work 14-hour days to put Emily through nursing school. My business line rang. I answered, hopefully, maybe the Henderson job, maybe Mrs. Thompson wanting her deck finished. "Johnson Construction." "We saw the video," a woman's voice said, clipped and professional. "We're canceling our contract effective immediately." "Ma'am, if you'd just let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. We don't work with racists." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, feeling something cold settle in my chest. The Davidson job. $40,000. 6 weeks of work for my crew. The phone rang again. Then again. By evening, I'd lost 3 contracts and received over 200 hate calls. My business email was flooded with messages I couldn't bear to read completely. From concernedcitizen2024@gmail.com, subject, "You disgust me." People like you are why this country is falling apart. I hope you lose everything. From justiceseeker@yahoo.com. Subject, racist contractor. Shared your info with all my friends. Good luck getting work in this town again. The worst part wasn't the strangers. The worst part was watching my neighbor's curtains twitch when I checked the mail, seeing the way Mrs. Garcia from next door suddenly found reasons to avoid eye contact. We'd been neighbors for 15 years. I'd fixed her fence after the storm, helped her son Carlos with his Eagle Scout project. Now she looked at me like I was a stranger. Worse, like I was the enemy. That night, Emily came home alone. She moved through the house like a ghost, her eyes red from crying. I was sitting at the kitchen table staring at my laptop screen where the video's view count kept climbing. "Dad," she said quietly, "we need to talk." I closed the laptop. "How bad is it at work?" She sat down across from me in the chair she'd used for homework and heart-to-heart since she was a little girl. 3 nurses asked me if it was true. If you really said those things. What did you tell them? I told them. She paused, her voice breaking. I told them I didn't know anymore. Those words hit harder than all the hate calls combined. This was my daughter, my Emily, the little girl who used to say I was her hero. Now she didn't know who I was. "Emily, you know me better than anyone in the world. Do you really think? I know what I thought I knew, she interrupted. But that video, Dad, the way you looked at him, the things you said. I said he needed to get a job. I said he was taking advantage of you. But the way you said it. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Maybe I never noticed before. Maybe I didn't want to see it. I reached across the table for her hand, but she pulled away. That small gesture, or lack of it, broke something fundamental inside me. Where's Tyler? I asked. He's staying with friends. He says he doesn't feel safe here anymore. She looked up at me and I saw Linda's eyes filled with confusion and disappointment. Dad, he showed me messages, death threats, people saying they want to hurt him because of what you did. What I did, Emily, I never threatened anyone. You called him out publicly. You made him look bad in front of everyone. He was living in my house rent-free for 3 months. That's not the point anymore. Her voice was getting louder, more distant. The point is that 50,000 people think you're a racist, and maybe they're not all wrong. I sat back in my chair feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. This was my daughter. The little girl I'd rocked to sleep, walked to school, cheered for at soccer games. The young woman I'd supported through nursing school, celebrated with when she got her first job, held when she cried over broken hearts. Now, she was looking at me like I was the one who'd broken her heart. I think I should stay with Tyler for a while, she said quietly, until things calm down. Emily, please. Don't let him turn you against me. He's not turning me against you, Dad. You did that yourself. After she left, I sat in the same kitchen where Tyler had recorded that video, surrounded by the silence of a house that suddenly felt too big. On the refrigerator, held by a magnet shaped like a stethoscope, was a photo from Emily's nursing school graduation. She was wearing her cap and gown, beaming with pride, her arm around my shoulders. I was wearing my best suit, the one I'd bought special for the occasion, and we both looked so happy. Thanks for believing in me, Dad, she'd written on the back. I couldn't have done it without you. I pulled the photo down and held it in my hands, remembering that day. How proud I'd been, how excited for her future. Now that future felt like it was slipping away from both of us. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw your video. This is just the beginning. We're going to make sure everyone knows what you really are. I set the phone aside and walked to the living room to the mantel where Linda's picture sat next to Emily's graduation photo. Linda in her wedding dress, laughing at something I'd said just before the camera clicked. She'd had the most beautiful laugh, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. What would you do, baby? I whispered to the empty room. How do I fight something like this? But Linda couldn't answer, and Emily was gone, and tomorrow I'd wake up to more hate calls, more canceled contracts, more neighbors who'd decided they knew exactly who Robert Johnson was, based on a 3-minute video. That night, I climbed into bed alone and stared at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. This was the same room where Linda and I had planned our future, where we'd whispered about Emily's first steps, her first words, her first day of school. Where we'd held each other through the hard times and celebrated the good ones. Now it felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. But as I lay there in the darkness, something else stirred in my chest. Not despair that would come later. This was something harder, more focused. I'd been ambushed, caught off guard by an enemy who fought dirty and used weapons I didn't understand. But I hadn't survived Vietnam by giving up when the fight got ugly. Tyler Jackson thought he'd destroyed me with one video. He thought he could take my daughter, my reputation, my life's work, and walk away clean. He was about to learn that some battles are won not by the loudest voice, but by the longest memory. And I had memories that went back 50 years, to a jungle where boys became men, and the only color that mattered was the red of the blood we all bled together. It was time to visit my attic. The attic ladder creaked under my weight as I climbed into the dusty darkness above my garage. I hadn't been up here since the Christmas after Linda died, when Emily and I had packed away the decorations we couldn't bear to look at yet. The air smelled of cardboard, and memories thick with the ghosts of better times. I pulled the chain for the single bulb, and yellow light spilled across boxes labeled in Linda's careful handwriting. Emily's baby clothes, wedding photos, Bob's army stuff, and that last box sat in the far corner covered in a decade of dust and deliberate forgetfulness. I hadn't opened it since we moved into this house 23 years ago. Some memories are easier to keep buried. But Tyler Jackson had declared war on my character, and real character, isn't built in comfort. It's forged in the worst moments of a man's life, when everything is stripped away except the choice to be decent or be something else. I dragged the box into the light and cut through the tape with my pocket knife. The same knife I'd carried in Vietnam, worn smooth by 46 years of use. The first thing I saw was my dress uniform still pressed and pristine in its plastic bag. Below that, medals I'd forgotten I owned. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Combat Infantryman Badge, and underneath it all, a manila envelope thick with letters, citations, and photographs. I pulled out the Bronze Star citation, first my hands trembling slightly as I read words I hadn't seen in decades. For heroic achievement in ground combat against a hostile force. Specialist Robert Johnson, with complete disregard for his own safety, advanced through intense enemy fire to rescue wounded comrades. His actions directly resulted in saving the lives of 3 soldiers who would otherwise have perished. 3 soldiers. I remembered their names, Rodriguez Washington and Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson, a 19-year-old kid from Detroit who'd been in country for 2 weeks when the mortars started falling. I'd carried him out of that jungle with shrapnel in my own leg, blood in my eyes and bullets snapping through the trees like angry wasps. Michael was black. So was Washington. Rodriguez was Puerto Rican. I was just a scared white kid from Spokane who'd learned that when bullets are flying, the only color that matters is the red we all bleed together. I pulled out a photograph. 5 soldiers around a makeshift table made from ammunition crates, playing poker with cigarettes for chips. Me in the center, Michael to my left, his arm in a sling from the wounds I'd helped to dress. We were all grinning like idiots, probably drunk on army whiskey, and the simple fact that we were still alive. On the back, in Michael's handwriting, Brothers in Blood 1969. Bob saved my life twice, once in the jungle once, when he taught me to play poker without tells. I set the photo aside and reached for the letters. 23 of them, yellowed with age, but still legible. Letters from the families of soldiers I'd served with, soldiers I'd helped, soldiers whose lives had intersected with mine, in that green hell half a world away. The first one was from Michael's mother, Dear Robert. I want you to know that my boy Michael talks about you in every letter. He says you're the finest man he's ever known. And that's saying something because his father is a good man too. Michael says you don't see color. You just see people who need help and you help them. That's the kind of man I raised my son to be. And I'm grateful he found someone like you to look up to. You bring my boy home safe, you hear? And when this war is over, you come to Detroit. We'll have Sunday dinner, and you can tell me all the stories Michael's too modest to share. With love and gratitude, Mrs. Patricia Jackson. I had to stop reading for a moment. Mrs. Jackson had died in 1987. I'd gone to her funeral, sat in the back of the church, while Michael delivered a eulogy that made strong men cry. She'd never seen her grandson, Tyler, never knew that the family name would one day be used as a weapon against the man who had saved her son's life. The next letter was from Washington's wife. Bob, David told me what you did in that firefight last month. How you went back for him when everyone else thought he was gone. How you carried him 2 miles through enemy territory to get him to the medic. I just wanted you to know that because of you, my children will have their father. Because of you, I'll have my husband. You're family now, whether you like it or not. When you get home, you come see us in Chicago. We'll show you what real gratitude looks like. Love, Angela Washington. Letter after letter. Testament after testament to a young man who'd learned that brotherhood transcends everything. Race, religion, background, politics. In that jungle, we were just Americans trying to get each other home alive. I found the photo I was looking for near the bottom of the pile. It was from a USO show in Da Nang, 1969. Our entire platoon was there, and somehow a photographer had captured us all together. 18 men, black and white and brown arms around each other's shoulders, grinning like we owned the world. In the center, Michael and I stood side by side. He was wearing my lucky hat. I'd lent it to him for the picture, because he said it made him look like a movie star. I was wearing his dog tags along with mine. We'd switched them as a joke and forgotten to change back. On the back of this photo, someone had written all our names in order. Next to Michael's name, in his own handwriting, my brother Bob saved my life and taught me what real courage looks like. My hands were shaking now, not from age, but from the weight of memory. These weren't just photographs and letters. They were proof of who I'd been, who I'd always been, long before Tyler Jackson was even born. I found the phone number I was looking for in an old address book written in Linda's careful script. She'd kept track of all my Army buddies, sent Christmas cards to their families, remembered their birthdays better than I did. Michael Jackson Sr., Detroit, Michigan. I dialed the number, my heart pounding. It had been 3 years since we'd talked, not since Linda's funeral, when he'd flown out to pay his respects to the woman who'd become like a daughter to him. Hello. The voice was older, rougher around the edges, but unmistakably Michael. Michael, it's Bob. Bob Johnson. The pause lasted forever. Then, Bobby, Jesus, man, how are you? How's Emily? How's everything? Emily's good. Well, she was good. Michael, I need to ask you something, and it's going to sound strange. Shoot, brother. You know I'd do anything for you. I took a deep breath. Do you have a grandson named Tyler? Tyler Jackson? Another pause, longer this time. Yeah, I do. Why are you asking about Tyler? He's been dating my daughter. And Michael, he's been telling people I'm a racist. The silence stretched so long I thought the line had gone dead. Then Michael started laughing, not happy laughter, but the bitter kind that comes when life throws you a curveball you never saw coming. That little son of a... Bob, I'm so sorry. Tyler has been nothing but trouble since he was 16. Got kicked out of 3 schools, can't hold a job, lies like breathing. His parents finally cut him off last year when they caught him stealing from his own grandmother. He's been living in my house for 3 months, Michael, telling my daughter I hate him because he's black. Bob. Michael's voice went hard, the same tone he'd used in Vietnam when we were planning something dangerous. That boy doesn't know the first thing about real racism or real character. You want me to tell you what real character looks like? Real character is a white kid from Spokane who carried my black ass 2 miles through enemy fire because he couldn't stand the thought of leaving me behind. I need a favor, Michael. Name it. I need you to help me remind this community who Robert Johnson really is. Bobby, Michael said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. It would be my honor. After I hung up, I sat in that dusty attic, surrounded by the evidence of who I'd always been. These letters, these photos, these medals, they weren't just memories. They were ammunition in a war I hadn't asked for, but wasn't going to lose. Tyler Jackson thought he could destroy me with lies and manipulated video. He thought he could turn my daughter against me, ruin my business, poison my community with false accusations of racism. But Tyler had made one fatal mistake. He'd chosen to attack the character of a man who'd had his character tested in the worst possible circumstances and had come through clean. I carefully repacked everything except the photos, letters, and medals I'd need for tomorrow. Because tomorrow, I was going to do something I should have done 46 years ago. I was going to let the world meet the real Robert Johnson. Not the edited version in Tyler's video, not the villain in his lies, but the man who'd learned in a Vietnamese jungle that the content of a person's character has nothing to do with the color of their skin. Tyler wanted a war about race. I was about to give him a war about truth. And in wars about truth, the side with the most evidence usually wins. As I climbed down from the attic, I heard my phone buzzing with another hate call. But for the first time in 3 days, I smiled. Let them call. Let them rage. By tomorrow night, they'd know exactly who they'd been cursing. And more importantly, so would Emily. The box of evidence sat on my kitchen table like a loaded weapon. Tomorrow, I was going to use it. The Spokane Community Center hadn't seen a crowd like this since the mayoral election of 2020. By 7 o'clock, every seat was filled and people lined the walls, spilling out into the hallway. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, watching through the windows as neighbors I'd known for decades filed inside their faces, grim with the weight of a community divided. The manila envelope beside me contained everything: photos, letters, citations, and the phone number Michael had given me for the local news station. "You tell them Michael Jackson Sr. wants to speak about Bob Johnson," he'd said. "You tell them I've got something to say about real racism versus real character." Inside the community center, I could see Tyler at the front table, surrounded by supporters holding signs, "No place for hate" and "Justice for Tyler." He was wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt and a serious expression, playing his role perfectly. Emily sat in the front row behind him, her nurse's uniform wrinkled from a long shift. Her eyes red from crying. My daughter believed she was supporting justice. She had no idea she was about to witness it. I walked through the crowd feeling the weight of 200 stares. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Children were shushed. Someone whispered, "There he is," like I was a criminal arriving at my own trial. Mrs. Thompson, whose deck I'd built last summer, looked away when I passed. Jim Garcia, whose son I'd mentored through Eagle Scouts, crossed his arms and shook his head. These were my neighbors, my community people who'd eaten at my barbecues and borrowed my tools. Now they looked at me like I was a stranger. I took a seat in the back, the manila envelope heavy in my hands. At the front of the room, City Councilman Wilson called for order. "We're here tonight to address the concerning incident that has divided our community," Wilson began. "We believe in open dialogue and healing. Tyler Jackson has requested time to speak about his experience, and then we'll open the floor for discussion." Tyler stood up, and I had to admit he was good. He spoke softly, forcing people to lean forward, making them invest in his words. He talked about feeling unwelcome in my house, about the microaggressions and coded language I'd used. He painted himself as a young man trying to build a future with the woman he loved, only to be crushed by an older generation's prejudice. "I've received death threats," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "People have told me I should know my place, that I should be grateful for whatever scraps Bob Johnson throws my way. But I refuse to be silent in the face of hatred." The crowd murmured sympathetically. I saw Emily wiping her eyes, saw neighbors nodding in agreement. Tyler was building his case masterfully, weaving truth and lies so skillfully that even I might have believed him if I didn't know better. Some of you might say, this is just a family dispute, Tyler continued. But this is bigger than one family. This is about what kind of community we want to be. Do we stand with those who judge people by the color of their skin? Or do we stand for justice? The applause was thunderous. Tyler returned to his seat, satisfaction flickering across his face for just a moment, before settling back into righteous dignity. Councilman Wilson looked around the room. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? I stood up slowly, my knees protesting after 30 years of construction work. The room went silent, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic on Division Street. I would, I said. The crowd turned toward me like sunflowers following the sun. I walked down the center aisle, my footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. Emily's face was a mask of pain and embarrassment. Tyler watched me approach with the confidence of a man who'd already won. I reached the front and turned to face 200 people who thought they knew who I was. The manila envelope felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My name is Robert Johnson, I began. Some of you know me. Some of you think you know me. All of you have heard one version of what happened in my kitchen 4 days ago. Tonight I'd like to tell you about a different kitchen in a different time, where I learned what real character looks like. I opened the envelope and pulled out the first photograph, 5 young soldiers around a makeshift table grinning at the camera. This photo was taken in Vietnam in 1969. I'm the white kid in the middle. The black soldier to my left is named Michael Jackson. He was 19 years old, and 3 weeks after this picture was taken, I carried him out of a jungle under enemy fire because that's what brothers do for each other. I held up the Bronze Star citation. This medal was awarded to me for rescuing 3 wounded soldiers. All 3 were men of color. I didn't save them because I was brave. I saved them because when someone is bleeding, the only color that matters is red. The room was dead silent now. Even Tyler had stopped smiling. I pulled out Mrs. Jackson's letter and read it aloud, my voice carrying clearly to the back of the room. Michael says you don't see color, you just see people who need help, and you help them. That's the kind of man I raised my son to be, and I'm grateful he found someone like you to look up to. I looked directly at Tyler. That letter was written by your grandmother's son, Patricia Jackson of Detroit, Michigan. Michael Jackson Sr. is the man whose life I saved. He's your grandfather. The gasp that went through the crowd was audible. Tyler's face went white, then red, then white again. Emily's mouth fell open. I called your grandfather yesterday, I continued. We had a long talk about family, about character, about truth. Michael, would you like to tell everyone what you told me? I pulled out my phone and dialed the number Michael had given me. The community center's sound system crackled to life as his voice filled the room. This is Michael Jackson Sr., calling from Detroit, Michigan. I want everyone in that room to listen carefully because I'm only going to say this once. Tyler tried to stand up, but the weight of 200 stares pushed him back down. Michael's voice continued strong and clear despite his 73 years. Bob Johnson is the finest man I've ever known. He saved my life in Vietnam, and he's been like a brother to me for 50 years. Anyone who calls him a racist is either a liar or a fool, and my grandson Tyler appears to be both. The silence was deafening. Tyler has been lying to his family for years, Michael went on. He's unemployed because he was fired for theft. He can't hold a relationship because he's abusive. And he's been banned from half the family gatherings because he steals from his own relatives. Bob Johnson's only crime was seeing through the lies that fooled everyone else. I hung up the phone and looked out at the crowd. Mrs. Thompson was staring at me with tears in her eyes. Jim Garcia was slowly shaking his head, whether at Tyler or at himself. I couldn't tell. "I have 23 letters here," I said, holding up the stack. Letters from families thanking me for bringing their sons home alive. Letters from black soldiers, Hispanic soldiers, white soldiers, all of them, testimony to the same thing. Character isn't about what you look like. It's about what you do when no one is watching. I turned to Emily, my heart breaking at the confusion and shame in her eyes. "Sweetheart, I never opposed Tyler because he's black. I opposed him because I watched him take advantage of your kindness, your generosity, and your love. I've seen good men and bad men of every color, and Tyler Jackson is not a good man." "That's not true," Tyler said, finally finding his voice. But it came out weak, desperate. "Isn't it?" I pulled out my phone again. "Should I call your wife in Detroit? The one you forgot to mention to my daughter? Should I read the police reports from your domestic violence arrests? Should I tell everyone about the money you've been stealing from Emily's purse?" Emily's face went white. "What money?" "The $60 that went missing last week. The $40 the week before. Your grocery money, your gas money. I've been replacing it without telling you, because I didn't want you to know what kind of man you were really dating." Tyler stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. "This is harassment. This is truth," I said quietly, "and truth has a way of exposing everything else." The crowd was turning now, murmuring, looking at Tyler with new eyes. The signs supporting him seemed suddenly ridiculous. The righteous anger was shifting, flowing like water, finding its level. Councilman Wilson cleared his throat. "Mr. Jackson, do you have a response to these allegations?" Tyler looked around the room like a trapped animal. He could see it happening, his carefully constructed narrative falling apart, his support evaporating, his lies catching up with him all at once. This is all taken out of context. Bob Johnson is trying to deflect from his own racism by showing his bronze star," called out a voice from the crowd. It was Jim Garcia standing up slowly. "By reading letters from the families of black soldiers he saved. By having his victim's own grandfather call him a hero," added Mrs. Thompson. Tyler tried one more time. "He's manipulating all of you. No," Emily said, standing up. Her voice was quiet but carried clearly through the room. "You're the one who's been manipulating all of us." She turned to face me, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Tyler made one last desperate play. "Emily, baby, don't let him turn you against me. You know what we have is real." "What we have," Emily said, her voice getting stronger, "is based on lies. How long were you planning to keep the wife and kids a secret? How long were you going to keep stealing from me?" The room erupted in whispers. Tyler looked around desperately, realized his support had completely evaporated, and did what cowards do when they're caught. He ran, pushed through the crowd out the door into the parking lot, and disappeared into the Spokane night like the fraud he had always been. The community center slowly emptied after that. People came up to me one by one to apologize, to shake my hand, to ask if they could see the letters and photos. Mrs. Thompson hugged me so tight I thought she might crack a rib. Jim Garcia asked if his son could interview me for his senior project on local veterans. But the only person who mattered was Emily. She stood in front of me when everyone else had gone, my little girl who'd grown up to be a woman I was proud of, even when she'd lost faith in me. "Dad," she said, "how can you ever forgive me?" I pulled her into my arms the way I had when she was small and the world seemed too big and scary. "Sweetheart, there's nothing to forgive. You fell in love with who you thought he was. That's not a crime, that's just being human. But I chose him over you. I believed his lies over everything you'd taught me. And then you chose truth when it mattered most." I held her tighter. That's all anyone can ask for. 6 months later, Emily was dating again a young doctor at the hospital named Daniel Kim. He was kind, hardworking, respectful, and when he asked for my permission to marry her, he looked me straight in the eye and meant it. The color of his skin never came up in our conversation because it didn't matter. What mattered was the content of his character, just like it had in a Vietnamese jungle 50 years ago. Tyler Jackson disappeared that night and never came back. Last I heard, his wife in Detroit had filed for divorce and full custody. His grandfather Michael disowned him publicly, saying that Bob Johnson was more family to him than his own blood. My construction business came back stronger than ever. Turns out being a war hero is good for business, especially when you never talk about it until someone forces your hand. But the best part was having my daughter back. Having Sunday dinners where we talked about her work, her dreams, her future. Having someone to share memories of Linda with someone who remembered her laugh and her terrible singing voice and the way she could make everything okay just by being there. The truth had set us all free, everyone except the man who tried to destroy us with lies. And sometimes late at night, when I'm sitting on the porch swing where I used to read Emily bedtime stories, I think about a lesson I learned in Vietnam and relearned in a community center in Spokane. Character isn't about what you look like or where you come from. It's about what you do when the shooting starts. And when the shooting started in my own life, I did what I'd been taught 50 years ago by the best men I'd ever known. I stood up for truth. I protected the people I loved, and I never left a brother behind. That's not about race. That's about being human. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss these powerful family stories. I'd love to hear from you. In the comments below, have you ever been falsely accused of something? How did you handle it? What would you have done in Bob's situation? Share this video with someone who needs to hear that truth. Always wins in the end, even when it takes time. Your support means everything to storytellers like us who believe these family lessons matter. And remember, character isn't about what you look like. It's about what you do when nobody's watching. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.